Falter of go video elders the hair short in general common echt the kind of loch. I'm stay and show on a balalan. Dat je rukas a hoku aan a show. Ach er voor goedschap is zegt aan het chieren keen. Als je een zo'n draast is toch wel ze gewoon in de wrakkel. Chenne goel reactief agus pakken mooi aan kunt maar gewoon ik met je echt in steg. Ga je die koorstel als je weer van naar Washington Leon in een horen in een ruim as galik. Get de hij zo gewoon vachkel ham ik ra. Ze kechti niet gewoon. Ach echt. Ga je nog gaan terug. What do they call you here?
Ketra the William.
Ketra the William. Who's for the William?
William Moore.
So.
Who was William's son.
No.
What else do I have?
What did he do, Roddy William? Because
basically, he drove a bus after coming out from the war.
Yes.
You mentioned him in the fellows, the Vroeg fellows.
Bus Roddy William.
Yes.
Well, so, it was do you remember the bus?
Mitchell, of course.
Do you remember the bus?
Of course, I went to school on the bus.
So there was no excuses for you being late from school then, because you went over in your own father's bus.
Well, there was no excuse, but sometimes it could be a bit of a problem, you know, not because it was my father driving the bus, but especially when we were in class 5 in the Nicholson. Addison, it didn't matter how heavy the snow was. Addison would insist that the people doing exams should at least try to get thrown away. And we always got as far as Leipenhover. And that's where I learned to dance how to dance the Dashing White Sergeant in the snow.
Sure. Well, there must be a story there. But let's go back to the very beginning, though.
What's the very beginning?
Balalan. You know, your first memories of Balalan.
Oh, during the war.
Sure.
In the beginning, I don't know which came first. But I remember a neighbor who was in the war and who died not too long afterwards in the war. He used to come and visit. And he sat on a chair, a kitchen chair. But he always sat on it the wrong way round.
Oh, sure.
It was great fun. That was a little memory. Another memory, our house was one of the few houses in the area with a radio.
Yeah.
My father and my uncle from that house were in the war. So it was important to listen to the news, including on a Sunday. But some people, and the neighbours used to come to listen to the news. Of course, you always got some holy willy who came and made a fuss that we had no right to be listening to the news. And my mother had a good tongue in her head, so she used to tell them off.
Sure.
I remember that. I remember being taken out into what we call the forest because a neighbour wanted to console my mother. I didn't know why she wanted to console my mother, but I remember we all had lettuce sandwiches out there as little children. I learned afterwards that the reason that Molly had taken my mother and us out there was that my mother had got the telegram. You know about the telegrams that used to come in the war when somebody was missing, presumed dead. And that had happened with my father, but he he didn't die because the ship was sunk somewhere, I suppose, around the Bay of Biscay because fishermen from Spain came and rescued them and took them to Gibraltar. One other memory during the war is the very end of the war in May. We got a letter from the King, signed the King, King George. I don't even remember what it said. But the teacher told us to go home and ask the people at home what George R.I. meant. And we all came back with the same answer. Did you ever hear it?
No.
George running idle. So those are my memories of the war. Also, my father or my uncle, when they came home, I think they used to get chocolate rations or something. They used to save them. So they always brought them home to us. Well, that's about all I remember of the war.
Yeah.
Except for aeroplanes flying over in the blackout.
Huh?
I didn't realize until many years later how that had affected me. When I first went to Glasgow to university, and there was a flight that flew from the airport, I suppose, around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would wake up with a start and heartbeat. But it was from an early memory of that happening in the war.
After the war, did they speak about it?
About the war?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes, but it was always the funny parts. There was one part, well, quite a few people from Balalan and from the whole area, of course, in the war, and a lot of them in the Navy. And a lot of them well, they were called up to the Navy because a lot of them had joined the Royal Naval Reserve when they were young boys. Did you hear that about that? And they used to do that because they got 2 weeks on the mainland on holiday. But they were called up about a year before the war started, and it was about a year afterwards before they were demobbed. But there was one night when there was a big raid on Southampton by the Germans. And my father and about 3 other people from the area found themselves in the same mess when the raid started. But the raid actually hit the officers' mess. I think there were several hundred officers killed that night. And the kind of story, they didn't dwell on the people who were killed, but they just said that when the sirens went, they all went down on the floor. And my father said that he looked up at one stage and there was, I won't say his name, but somebody from the village busy drinking the beer that all the men on the floor had left. I suppose it's a story.
Yes, well, and all these, did your father have Jason the Mop?
Oh, yes, of course, a brown one.
Tell me about Jason the Mop. Can you remember? Well, everybody.
Yes, they got it.
Some of them got married in Jason the Mop.
I suppose so. My father wore it to church a few times.
Uh-huh.
Yes, because it was a perfectly good suit. It was a nice suit.
Tell us about it, because there'd be some people listening to us here just now, they won't have a clue what we're talking about. Jason the Mop.
Jason the Mop, yes, the mop suit.
Uh-huh. They all got a suit, did they? Did they all get a suit?
As far as I understand, they did, yes. I don't know how much choice they had in the material and the colour.
Big lapels.
I don't know, I don't remember.
You know, turnips.
Oh, turnip cuffs, of course.
Yes.
But a nice suit.
The reason I'm asking you is about, did they talk about it? And you'd hearing is because that, the common story is that people, while they refer to the war, they didn't in fact talk about what they had seen or what they had done or anything.
No. Like my father, when the ship went down, I learned one thing, but this was from an old friend of his who kept in contact with him after the war, who had been on the ship with him and who had offered to take my father's place so that my father would be saved, because my father had a wife and family and he didn't. So that's about all I got about the sinking of that ship. Also, they were taken to Gibraltar, and all they spoke about, my father spoke about how he was walking down some street and somebody shouted to him, "Hey, show." That's all I remember. That's all they talked about. They didn't talk about anything.
And yet it must have affected them.
Well, I suppose so. Of course it affected them. Lots of people were killed. Some of the ships went down and many people were lost. Even in this village, where they become people like that, I think there were 2 people from the same family went down at the same time.
And what was the feeling at the time? Can you remember as a young girl, sadness or? No? Just carry on.
Well, I don't remember, because
these
are not things a little child.
No, that's right. That's right. But one thing that all children do is they have to go to school.
Oh, yeah.
What are your memories of going to school here? Just tell the truth, because this is for years to come.
I wouldn't say they were bad memories.
Sure.
And the teacher was, as I discovered later, a very nice lady.
Yeah, but at the time?
The psychology of teachers in those days was very different. They worked a lot on fear and shame. And I remember clearly that on a bad day, because we lived down at the other end of the village, when the weather went on a bad winter's day with a gale blowing and the rain falling, we were put on a bus which came through the village about 10 past 10. My mother and The same Molly who took us to the forest, they came out and they put us on the bus. And then we came off the bus at the school. But the school started at 9:30, and it must have been about 10:30 before we reached there. So the teacher had to shame us. And she had a little wooden pram made. And she got somebody to trundle us in that pram, calling us babies.
Oh,
That's the way they were, you know.
yes. Yeah.
She wasn't bad, but what else?
It was of the time.
Yes. There's a good thing I remember about her, and it helped me a lot later on when I had to try to teach some people who had learning difficulties. There was a girl, you know, in those days you had several classes in one room. And so we were given work to do, and somebody in another class, a girl from their village, obviously had been having difficulty learning to read. And I clearly remember the teacher saying, "Ka'ata," and the girl would say, "Ka'ata," and they'd get "Ka'ata, Ka'ata," until she could read cat. So there were good things and not so good things to remember about the school.
You then went to the Nicholson.
Mhm.
What was that like?
The Nicholson was fine. I was thinking about that the other day when you mentioned Lofty, because I went to the Nicholson, and at the start, during the summer, a year after when I should be going into Form 3, I got very ill with measles, so ill that they thought I would die, because I got encephalitis. And I was off school for I missed almost the whole of the term. I think exams were coming about a week after I went back. What I remember about Lofty, and it was very different from the others, Lofty would give the class work to do, and he would come and sit beside me and show me what I had missed.
Right.
Yeah, he was very good like that. What else about the Nicholson?
Just again, so that in case people listening or watching don't know who Lofty was, he was John MacArthur from Point.
I don't know if I ever knew that.
Yes,
I knew he
yes.
was from Point.
And he was also in the Nicholson when I was there, and he had the good sense to marry a lady from Col, Katrina Gould.
I think he got married quite late in life.
I don't know, but he had 3 of a family at least.
Oh, well, it wasn't that late.
No. So anyway, and did you like the Nicholson?
Yes. You didn't.
Well,
boys tend not to like.
I never liked school full stop, but that's a different story.
Yes.
Altogether. But you seem to be holding back a wee bit there when you said yes. But what was it? There was something that you didn't quite like about it, was there?
No.
No.
I mean, from the beginning, you went on the bus to school and you had fun on the bus, and you had fun on the bus coming back. And some of the teachers were good. Some of them, you realized afterwards, they were maybe very bright, but hopeless teachers, which is why people in the Nicholson at that time could never get higher marks. And it was only when I went to university that I realized that some people that I knew were much less intelligent than we were all had higher marks. And I realized why. But no.
Are you naming names?
No, I don't need to.
Well, some of these teachers you had were still there in my day.
Yes, I
And
know.
they tried to teach me maths, and some of them, I never had that teacher whom I think I know who you are referring to, but they still couldn't teach me maths.
I left that class. I was put into that class, which is the class that the people who are good at maths go to in Form 5. They don't call it Form 5 here.
Class 5.
Class 5. And I asked to be changed to Saucy's class. So Saucy took the lowest group, and people looked at me askance. Why are you asking that? I said, I want to pass maths because I want to go to university. And I did. She was a good teacher.
Saucy, it was Miss Smith.
Miss Smith.
Ina Smith. And her sister, Mary Smith, was one of my teachers in Bach School, and she went to Stornoway Primary as well.
Oh.
So anyway, the Nicholson. So had you got any idea then what you wanted to be or what you wanted to do?
Not really. But in my day, there wasn't much that a girl could do. Well, even a boy, um, you went to university if you wanted to go to university, and after that you had to go to Jordan Hill Training College and be a teacher.
That's what you did?
That's what I did.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed university. I hated Jordan Hill. Jordan Hill, they treated you like little children.
It's funny that, things. I don't think that stopped with your generation. I think that continued on. I've heard that so many people saying that.
Oh,
that you went from university where you were treated like an equal as an adult,
yes.
and then you were going in amongst teachers, and they were treating you as children.
Yes.
So you became a teacher, I think, in spite of Jordan Hill.
Well, Jordan Hill did teach you things too. I mean, you might not have liked it. They taught you a bit about public speaking. They give you practice in the classroom. They did teach you some things, and sometimes they listened to you when you spoke.
Sure. Do I get the impression that maybe you did speak at times?
Well, sometimes you were asked to speak and you had no choice.
Sure.
You didn't go to Jordan Hill?
Oh, no. I knew I wasn't going to become a teacher.
Was there much choice for you then? Because the boys who were with us, most of them became teachers.
It was starting to open out, I think, a bit more in my time. People wanted to do other things. And
what degree did you do?
MA in Aberdeen.
Oh, you went to Aberdeen?
In fact, 22 people from my 6 year in the Nicholson went to Aberdeen, not to the university, but to different colleges. Oh. This is you, and these, although we're talking about your early days, in many ways, what's interesting about you is that you went to there and you spent most of your life in another part of the world.
That's true.
You became did you actually teach here?
Yes, I taught for 7 years. I taught in Glasgow, and then I taught in Laxdale. The less said about that, the best. And then I taught for 1 year in the Nicholson before going to Trinidad.
Sure. I'm tempted to ask you about Laxdale, but something tells me that you wouldn't tell me.
Why? Well, it depends on what you ask.
What did you not like about it?
About what?
Laxdale. Hey, I told you wouldn't tell me. I asked you.
The headmaster was off his head.
Oh, sure. Oh, right.
When I say that, he would do things. He was, I shouldn't say that because, anyway, you wouldn't know who he was. He would come, when you went into school in winter time and class started at 9:30 and it was dark, and you put the lights on and you start to teach. And it would come to 10 o'clock and the daylight had come, but you forgot to, didn't even notice that the lights were still on. He would come right there, put his head inside the door and turn off the light.
Sure.
Oh.
You didn't like it?
I didn't mind the teaching. The teaching was nice. And the staff were nice too. Did you know Neil Murray?
Yes, very much.
Neil Murray was on staff with me.
Neil him ago.
Oh,
from back.
From back. Yeah, is he still alive?
No, unfortunately, Neil passed away a few years ago.
He was a very nice man.
Yeah.
He was there with me at the same time.
Yeah. But so anyway, you embarked on a teaching career, but no, I do want to move on to the next part of your life, which wasn't here. Tell me, how did you end up in the West Indies, and where were you?
I was in Trinidad. Mm-hmm. I'll make the long story short.
How long were you there, just so that people know?
56 years.
56 years. That's a long time when you say it like that, isn't it?
It's a long time. It passes quickly, but it's a long time.
So go on then, make the long story short.
We went, a group of us, 4 girls from Lewis, to work in Foster Clark's canning factory during the holidays. And we met, amongst others, a girl from Trinidad there who was studying art in London. She had just begun. And that was a 4-year course. And in those days, nowadays in Trinidad or any of these places, they go to university wherever. A lot of them here, many of them to the States, and fly home every holiday. But in those days, they went, and at the beginning of the 4 years, they went. At the end of the 4 years, they went back home. But the first time I met her, her mother was with her because her mother had come over to settle her in. And after that, every holiday, Jeanette came up here with us. They called her Wee Jan up here. They loved her. She loved here too. And then years later, after I had been teaching here for a while, my father had died by then. I was here with my mother. I was a bit fed up. In those days, there was no email. We just wrote letters, and she used to write me. And one day I got a letter saying there's a job in Trinidad if you'd like to apply. So I applied. Got the job.
Trinidad, from Balalan. That was unusual at the time, wasn't it?
I don't know.
No. So anyway, tell me about the job and tell me what happened then.
It was an interesting job. I mean, because here am I leaving. I won't say God's own island, but I just said it. And going to teach at Holy Name Convent.
Sure.
And that's where I went to teach. I taught there for quite a few years. It was very, very interesting. The education system there is kind of not exactly the same as here, but it's got different tiers. When I first went there, it was similar to the advanced division they used to have in the primary school here. If you didn't get to one of what they call the prestige schools, which were all church schools, you stayed on for extra time in primary school. But then that changed, and they introduced junior sec schools, which have not turned out to be that great, but they're okay. But the prestige schools, which all the church schools were, they are top-notch, really top-notch. And I taught there for a while, a good few years. Then the junior sec system was opened, and I wanted to see what that was like there because I had been in a junior sec in Glasgow.
Junior secondary.
That's where I learned to teach, you know. Not at Jordan Hill, not anywhere. Because I was supposed to be teaching, well, I ended up teaching literature at A level. I was supposed to be teaching at that level. I ended up getting a job. You know, in those days, you didn't apply for a job in teaching. The education board came out to you and assigned you places to be teachers. And I was assigned to a place in Springburn in Glasgow called Hyde Park. And it was a school for what they called educationally subnormal children. But that's where I learned it. Because, I mean, you had to learn.
But Trinidad, you went to teach in Trinidad and you stayed there 56 years, you're saying. What happened then that made you stay?
Well, I always liked Trinidad. I stayed for a while and then I went back. There were lots of reasons, some of them quite personal. I met my husband there. I got married, had a family there, well, a child, one child. I lived my life there. But it was a very interesting place to stay in, you know, because it was different from, you know, people go on holiday. I'm not judging them or anything, but they go on holiday for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe you do, Maddie, I don't know, and you go to the beach, or you go to the city, or wherever, and you think you're broadening your mind, but you're not. Not really. But if you go to a place like Trinidad, anywhere I think in the Caribbean, you learn that the history that we were taught in school is a different history to what they lived when they were out there. And what was interesting about there is that you had a lot of tolerance because they had no choice. It's an island about maybe 2.5, 3 times the area of Lewis and Harris together. But it has 1.4 million people in it. And these people are originally from India, like when I say originally, 300 or 400 years ago. Before that, from Africa. And then after the emancipation of slavery and the slaves ran away, they had to import people to help on the estates, and they tried first of all with the Portuguese because they wanted to keep it as white as possible with the Portuguese, but the Portuguese didn't manage. The Portuguese got sick and they couldn't deal with the climate. And then they took the Chinese. The Chinese didn't get sick and they could deal with the climate, but as soon as their contract was up, they went and they bought bars and shops, groceries and things like that. So that didn't work out. Finally, they brought the Indians in. The Indians worked. They worked very hard. At the end of the contract, they had the choice of going back home or of getting some land, and many of them chose land. And since then, of course, they worked very hard. Education was very, very important, not just to the Indians, but especially to the Indians. And they have done extremely well. So, what did it teach me? It really taught me that colonialism is not something like what you learn in school here. Clive of India and the British Empire were not such wonderful ideas to people who were having to suffer under them.
That's the subject for a very interesting and in-depth conversation, I am sure. But you were, in many ways, like my auntie,
Really?
ahead of your time, because my auntie in the 1950s married a man from Pakistan.
Oh, was your aunt you were talking about?
Yes, man from Pakistan. He was in the Navy and this kind of thing. And I still remember coming to Braga in the late 50s, he and her husband. And he was such a nice man, but his skin was a different color.
Yeah.
And you actually did the same thing over there, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes.
So tell me about that. What was the reaction in Balalan, or was there a reaction?
I don't know, because people aren't going to tell you. People are basically polite.
Are they?
Yes. When you think about it, they might not be polite behind your back, but they're polite to your face.
But without saying, it was very unusual at that time, wasn't it?
I suppose so.
You were ahead of your time.
I don't know.
You didn't think of it that way.
Maybe nowadays.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody doing the same thing nowadays would be ahead of their time too.
Yeah.
Two things I remember. One man, a good church elder, came and told me quietly that I wasn't doing the right thing.
Sure.
And somebody, you might even know the person, but I'm not going to tell you, who was at university with me. She's still a great friend of my friends, but I haven't told them anything. But one night we were in the Caberfay. Some big thing was going on in the Caberfay, and a lot of people were enjoying themselves. And she was there. She's from your side of the island too. She was there with her husband, and she came over to me, and she just said to me, "God, hit you now, law."
Oist.
Yeah, she said that.
Otist.
I haven't told anybody from the island that except you.
Aye.
Yeah,
aye.
she told. I'll never forget.
Well, I had an uncle, and he was never happy with what his sister did,
Yeah.
But the rest of the family were okay.
Oh, my family. Well, my mother was fine, and my sister Muriel loved Russell. I think they were fine. But
the thing is, had you any expectation when you went to Trinidad that you would be there basically for most of the rest of your life?
No. No, but I didn't have any expectation that I wouldn't be. You just go and you enjoy yourself and live your life.
And was it an easy life?
I suppose it wasn't hard.
And were you able to come back to Balalan during that time?
Oh yes, from time to time, very often, every 2 or 3 years. And the adventure, and my mother came out quite often too.
To Trinidad?
Yes, quite often.
Did she like it?
She loved it. She loved it.
It was warmer than here anyway.
Yeah, well, she was accustomed to the cold and the warmth too, so I don't think that bothered her very much. But my mother was a people person, and she loved the people.
But you say you used to come periodically. Did you notice this place changing, when you were living away from the place?
Yeah, a little bit. How did I notice? The thing that I noticed, well, towards the end, because my mother, the last time my mother visited, she was 88. And, she used to travel by herself. And traveling from here to Trinidad is not that easy. It's easy enough on the way back because you have to spend a night in Glasgow or in London or wherever, because the flight to Trinidad is in the morning. And she said that she didn't think she would she would come out after that. So she said I had to promise to come home. So I came home every Christmas until she died. And what I noticed was New Year. New Year here used to be a lovely thing. We didn't really went to a few houses, but everybody came here. My father was the sort of person who attracted people. He was a very quiet, very gentle person. Didn't get involved in any gossip, any talk at all. In fact, he discouraged it in a very quiet way. But people came to the house, and so there was a lot of coming and going. He cooked. He didn't normally cook, but he cooked for New Year. He made a big roast, and he had your whiskey and everything. So it was a lot of hilarity. Not anymore. Nobody does that anymore. And that was sad. The other thing, and I found this a bit sad too, and I have to go back to my university days with this. I told you when you visited the other day, that I couldn't do honours English because I didn't have Latin. But there were some special English classes that I chose to attend, so I didn't need them for my degree. But I chose to go there. It meant that I had to skip, I don't know what happened in Aberdeen, but in Glasgow, if you were doing an arts course, you had to do one science subject and one either moral philosophy or logic.
Same in Aberdeen.
Yes, except that in Aberdeen, moral philosophy was the difficult one and logic was the easy one, I understand. In Glasgow, it was the other way around. Anyway, I chose not to attend the science class, and I just bought a book, and I had to go to the labs, of course, and I went to this particular English literature class. And one day I'm kind of half listening to the professor when he starts to he was talking about medieval and miracle plays. And he spoke about how there was only one area where they were extant. And he said it was up in I don't know if he said the Isle of Lewis or he said the Hebrides. And he started to describe it. It was Eichegalley.
Yes. So, did you still have Eichegalley when you were young?
Well, of course, as a girl, we weren't allowed to have anything to do with it. Okay. But yes, you used to enjoy the sound of the boys coming and reciting the round. And then somebody came in with the calf skin, I think it was, on their back, and the man of the house pretended to beat him. And then they got so much money. I remember my brother coming home with pockets full of money. And of course, every house gave them something to eat, so they had a party. And they always chose the party to be in the place of a bachelor who was living alone.
Why was that?
Because, well, first of all, they would get no interference. The bachelor allowed them to. It was only boys there, of course. Yeah. But so these are things that have changed quite a lot.
No,
television too. That changed a lot.
Okay. So, after 56 years in Trinidad, you're back here in Balala. How did all that happen?
Well, Russell died. Katrina was up here. My sister Nona was living in this house, which was partly owned by her and partly owned by me, because it was a family home. She died. And I was living alone, and basically alone in Trinidad, because Russell didn't have any family members left in Trinidad. They were all over the place. And what happened then? Pressure was put on me basically from all sides to come home because it would be made more sense. And I had to agree, make more sense. Because the place was in danger of falling apart. In fact, there was a bad winter after my sister died and before I came home here, when slates went flying off the roof here. And so the pressure was put on me that I should come home. Not fierce pressure, but the suggestions were there. And of course, my daughter was saying that it made more sense. And in some ways, it has done, and I can agree with that. I mean, I have to go to hospital next week and the next week for two minor things. One of them is just a finger thing. The other is just something to be removed from here. I would have paid a lot of money to do that in Trinidad. I'm getting it free here from the NHS. So there is that. The cost of living is, of course, higher here. The cost of heating these old houses is terrible, which is why I put on the fire. It's astronomical. We didn't have to pay much. In Trinidad, it's an oil-producing country. There's not as much oil in it now as there used to be, but it's an oil-producing country. So electricity and gasoline for the car are subsidized. And so I noticed the price of fuel here. I also miss not being able to drive a car, as I told you the other day. But on the whole, it's a waste of time, really, to wish that you were in a different place.
Yeah. How did you feel when you were leaving Trinidad for the last time and coming to Balalan? Did you feel like that was your home? Did you feel that this was your home also?
A home is people, more than a place. And this house was empty by then. Of course, my daughter was here, and that makes a big difference. But the friends are there, they're not here. I mean, there are people that you might call friends, and I have very good neighbors, but they're not people you have been. I mean, I could go down the street and somebody would be calling, "Hey, Mrs. Austin." Now, that's all right. There's somebody you taught. But when you hear, "Hey, Miss Macdonald," that's somebody you taught 50 years ago. And they're still calling you in the street. Not often, but enough times. Also, Port Spain is quite a sophisticated city. And it was quite a change to have to come here, especially when you couldn't jump in your car and go driving all about the place. So, what else?
Well, it's just really the two places are so far apart in so many ways, not just physically, but also geographically, but also in terms of people and culture and all the rest of it. The Balalan you've come back to is very different to the Balalan you left to go to the Nicholson all these years ago, isn't it?
Well, yes, because neighborliness, well, that began to change with TV, When television came, the caling got reduced quite a lot.
Has that happened in Trinidad also?
Trinidadians are different people, City people are different people anyway. I don't know if that happened in Trinidad because they had TV before I went there, so I don't know. But island people are island people, And island people, they go all over the place. They leave, they come back. Education is important here. Education is very important there. I don't know what else. It was just a very interesting place out there because of all the different cultures and how they had been forced to tolerate each other and become it was really a very accepting society. It was interesting. Here now, even if I go walking on the road, some people might know me because they know where I come from. but I might not know them. Like there was a nice lady I met one day, and we were talking for a while. I had no idea who she was. I know now she was Baggy's wife. You know who Baggy is?
Yes.
I don't. I don't know. In that sense, things haven't changed that much because Baggy, for example, I don't know him. He could walk in here and I would have no idea who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But I have heard a lot about him, and I'm very interested and very happy to hear that he is progressing well. So in that sense, the sense of community is still there to some extent, but much less than it used to be because the community is different. People will not visit. And it's not just me. I know people don't visit other people. Whereas when I was growing up, people were in and out all the time. I don't know how many times the kettle was on the stove all the time, and people were making a cup of tea all the time. So I don't know. It's a bit sad to see all the ruins, all the thoughts that are all about the place.
With their memories.
Some of them were, I mean, some of them are so old that they were old people that I didn't have much to do with when I was a child. But you knew that people used to live there. And some of them were very interesting. But saying that the places are so different, I'll tell you one story that flummoxed me in a way. I was leaving here. I was on the plane from Stornoway to go to Trinidad. And there was an elderly man sitting beside me who wouldn't stop asking questions. You know, sometimes conversation here from the older people consists of questions. You didn't notice that?
Kun you fall off?
Well, Shin, yes, that too. But Caledon, well, it was in English. Where are you going? So I said, I'm going to Glasgow. Where are you going? Where are you going in Glasgow? I said, no, I'm not staying in Glasgow. I'm going to London. Where are you going in London?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going. I'm not staying in London. Where are you going? I'm going to Trinidad. Where are you going in Trinidad? It turned out that that man had been in the merchant navy during the war. A friend of his from the island had contracted TB and had been taken to a hospital in Trinidad. And every time the ship was there, that man went and visited his friend. So he knew Trinidad quite well because the hospital was not in the city, it was outside the city. My father asked Jeanette when she was up here if she knew where the Gaza Strip was. So she started to say, well, I think so, it's in the Middle East. I said, oh no, I'm not talking about that Gaza Strip. Because he used to go into Trinidad. There was an American base in Trinidad at the time of the war. And he used to go in there, and there's a main road just down by the port, which was full of red light houses.
Oh, sure.
And that's what they called the Gaza Strip.
But your father wasn't admitting that it was ever there.
Well, he knew about it. So, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of things that we could talk about in depth, but for the present, we might revisit some of them at some other stage. But for the present, can I say thank you very much indeed for allowing us to come into your house and speak to you here in Ballal.
Okay, you're very welcome, Tapalai. You're very welcome. I'm sorry you wouldn't take a cup of tea or anything.